Seraphine Voss had one dress left. She folded it carefully, the way her mother had taught her, corners meeting corners, edges precise. The guard waiting at her door did not look at her. He had not looked at her since he delivered the news. She understood why. Some things are easier to carry when you do not look at the person carrying them. She walked out of the castle without being escorted. No one stopped her. No one called after her. The great iron doors closed behind her, with a sound that was not dramatic, just heavy, and final, and done. The border stones were 2 miles east. She walked them in the dark. When she was certain she was past them, she sat down on the cold ground and allowed herself to cry. Not for long. Long enough. Then she stood up, straightened the dress she was wearing, and looked at what was in front of her. What was in front of her was a territory that belonged to no one and everyone, a stretch of land between the wolf packs and the human settlements where people lived, who had been forgotten by both. It was not beautiful, it was not welcoming, it was simply there, which was more than the castle had offered her in the last hour. She walked toward the lights. The man who opened the door was old and very small, with eyes that had seen enough of the world to stop being surprised by it. His name was Brix. He was the settlement's healer, its informal leader, and its longest resident. He had arrived 30 years ago, under circumstances he did not discuss, and had never left. He looked at Seraphine standing on his step. One dress, no bag, eyes still carrying the evidence of crying she thought she had hidden, and said nothing. He stepped aside. She walked in. He put water on to boil. They sat across from each other, at a small wooden table, while the fire worked on the cold. "I was banished," Seraphine said. She felt it was important to be direct. "I know," Brix said. "Word travels faster than people do." He slid a cup of something warm toward her. "Drink this." She drank it. It tasted like herbs and something slightly bitter underneath. She did not ask what was in it. She was, at that moment, not in a position to have preferences. He watched her hands while she held the cup. She noticed him watching but said nothing about it. "You can sleep in the room at the back," he said. "We will talk more when you have slept." She slept for 14 hours and woke up to the sound of the settlement going about its business. Voices, movement, the particular noise of a community that has learned to function without anyone watching over it. She lay still for a moment and listened to it. It sounded, she thought, like something real. She learned the settlement in the way you learn any place, slowly, through small things. She learned that the woman 3 doors down kept chickens, and would trade eggs for help mending. She learned that the eastern edge of the territory had a water source that froze badly in winter and needed a better channel cut. She learned that 2 of the families there had a dispute over shared land that had been running for 4 years and had never been resolved because there was no one with the authority to resolve it. She resolved it, quietly, without authority, by sitting with each family separately and then together, and asking the right questions until the answer appeared on its own. Both families were surprised. They had expected the argument to simply continue, because it always had. Word of that spread the way useful things spread in small communities, person to person, attached to a name. 6 months in, she was sick. It came on suddenly, with fever that climbed fast and stayed high, and did not respond well to anything Brix tried. She lay in the back room for 3 days, mostly unconscious, and on the second night something happened. She did not remember it. She was not awake for it. What happened was this. Every plant in Brix's herb garden, carefully maintained through the early frost, bloomed. In the dark, in the cold, all at once. 3 wolves living 3 miles into the nearest pack territory dropped to their knees simultaneously and could not explain why. A candle that had burned down to its last inch stayed lit for an hour past the point where it should have gone out. In the morning the fever broke. Brix sat beside her bed and did not speak for a long time. "What is it?" she asked. Her voice was rough, and she was very tired, but she was awake, and she was watching his face. "You are not weak," he said. She looked at him. "What you were. What they read in that court." He paused, choosing his words carefully, the way he chose herbs. "Someone locked you. A long time ago. Before you were old enough to understand what was being done." He looked at his hands. "I have seen it once before. Only once. The person it was done to did not live long enough for the lock to break. Seraphine was quiet. "Why?" she finally said. "To protect you," Brick said. "And to protect what you carry. Until the time was right." "Who did it?" He looked at the ceiling, not evasively, but in the way of a man indicating something larger than the room. Seraphine understood. She did not have words for what she felt. She lay back against the pillow and looked at the ceiling herself, and the feeling that moved through her was not relief, and not anger, and not grief. It was something quieter than all of those, the particular feeling of something large and patient that has been holding its breath finally, very slowly, beginning to exhale. She was in the settlement for a year before the next thing happened. The next thing was a territorial dispute between two packs. Not the exile settlement, but two wolf packs on either side of it, whose borders had been rubbing against each other badly. Tensions had been rising for months. Everyone in the settlement knew it. A bad territorial war would damage them too. They lived between the walls. Seraphine walked to the meeting point before the pack representatives arrived. She had not been invited. She went anyway. She sat down at the center point and waited. When both parties arrived and found a quiet Omega woman sitting at the negotiation table, looking as though she belonged there entirely, they stopped. She spoke for 3 hours. She asked questions and then listened to the answers. And when people said things that were not actually the truth of what they meant, she said so gently and waited. She found the actual problem beneath the presented one, which was land, but was also fear. Fear about the winter supply, fear about their young, fear about a future that felt uncertain. She addressed the actual problem. By the end of the 3rd hour, both parties had agreed to a joint arrangement neither had walked in willing to consider. They asked her name before they left. She told them. She watched their faces process it. The banished Omega, the king's discarded mate. And she watched them decide it did not matter, or rather that it mattered in a way different from how they had expected. She walked back to the settlement in the dark, and Brix was waiting at the door with something warm, and neither of them said anything about it, because neither of them needed to. In the castle, things were not good. Calum Dre was a man who had always known exactly what to do next. He had been raised for it. His father had been a decisive king, and his grandfather before that, and the Dre line had not produced a hesitant man in 4 generations. He stared at trade reports he had already read, and understood them perfectly, and could not bring himself to act on them. The packs under his kingdom were struggling. The healers reported that Omega populations were destabilizing, fewer successful bonds, higher rates of what the healers called separation sickness, the pups born with weaker connections to their packs than was normal. The best minds in his court had no explanation. They presented theories. The theories were careful and thorough and completely useless. His mother came for a private dinner in the 14th month. She was a small, precise woman who had been running the household accounts since Calum was 7 years old and had never once made an error. She sat across from him and let him talk about the trade reports and the pack numbers and the healer findings, and when he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "You made a mistake," she said. He did not argue. "The question," she said, "is what you intend to do about it." He stared at his plate. "I don't know if she would hear me," he said. "No," his mother agreed. "But that is her decision to make, not yours. Your decision is whether you go." The convergence happened at the end of that year. It was a gathering held once every century. All packs, all territories, all represented at the ancient clearing that predated every current pack name and belonged, in the way sacred things belong, to no one and to the living world itself. Attendance was obligation, and tradition, and ceremony, and something older than all of those. Calum went. Every pack sent its leader or its chosen representative. What happened at the convergence, no one was prepared for, not because it was violent or terrible, but because it was simply certain. The moon goddess did not appear in a form that could be described. She was simply present in the way that weather is present, surrounding, undeniable, already happening, and then every person in that clearing simply knew, in the way you know things, that arrive not through your ears, but through your bones. Seraphine Voss was the true queen of all packs. Not the wife, not the companion, the queen. There was no explanation offered. The moon goddess did not offer explanations. She offered facts, and she had been building this particular fact for a very long time. Calum stood very still. Around him, the representatives of 7 packs processed what they had just received. Some of them had heard of the exile woman. Some of them had heard of the territorial dispute she had resolved. One of them had traded with the borderland settlement she had helped build, and had specific, practical, favorable opinions of her. What Calum felt, standing in that clearing with the certainty of it settling through him, was not loss and not anger. It was something worse than both, the precise and total understanding of exactly what he had discarded, and exactly how he had done it, and exactly who had benefited from him doing it. He looked across the clearing and found Counselor Marin. She was very still. Her face was doing nothing. He had always read that, her stillness, her careful nothing face, as competence. Standing in the clearing with the goddess's naming still resonating in him, he read it as something different. He left the clearing before the formal close of the convergence. He rode to the borderlands. He arrived alone. This was intentional. Seraphine saw him from 50 feet away. The settlement's outer paths were open, and she had been returning from the water channel, the one she had helped redesign in her second winter there, which now ran clean through the freeze. She had good boots. She was carrying a tools bag. She was not dressed for the occasion of being looked at by the man who had signed her banishment decree. She stopped. He kept walking. He stopped 6 feet from her. "I came alone," he said, which was not the thing he had meant to say first, but it came out. "I see that," she said. He told her. All of it. What happened, how Marin had positioned it, what he had allowed himself to believe because it was easier than the alternative, the moment he had stared at his hands, and known he was making an error, and made it anyway, because the court was watching, and he was afraid of what it would cost him to choose differently. He did not soften any of it. He did not arrange it to make himself easier to look at. When he finished, she was quiet. "Did you love me?" she asked. "When we were matched?" He thought about this honestly. "I was going to," he said. "I think I was on the way." She looked at him for a long time with an expression he could not fully read. Then she said, "I will go to the convergence. I will do what the moon goddess has named me to do. And what that means for you and I." She paused. "I don't know yet. And I won't pretend I do." "That's fair," he said. "I know it is," she said, and she picked up her tools bag and walked back toward the settlement, and he stood on the path for a moment before following. The lock broke fully at the convergence site. There was no dramatic light, there was no sound. Seraphine stood at the center of the clearing, 7 packs represented around her, and the last of the suppression her bloodline had carried simply ended, the way a held note ends, not with noise but with resolution. Every pack bond in the kingdom that had been fraying knit back at once. 2 Omegas who had been unable to sense their mates for 7 months felt the connection return. A pack leader, 40 miles away, sat up in the night, not knowing why, just knowing something had been fixed. The separation sickness numbers in Calum's kingdom would drop to near nothing within 3 months. The healers would have no explanation. Seraphine stood at the center of it all and felt, for the first time in her memory, like her exact right size. She did not move into the castle. She built the seat of her queenship at the convergence site. Neutral ground, no single packs to claim. The borderland settlement became the administrative heart of an interpack council that had not existed for 2 centuries. Brix joined her as her chief advisor. He brought his herb garden, or most of it. He left the section that had bloomed in the dark. He said it needed to stay where it was. Marin was exiled. Seraphine specified this when Calum asked her what she wanted done. He had expected something else. "I know what exile is," Seraphine said. "It is enough." Calum spent a year rebuilding his court with different hands. He sent monthly reports to her council. They were honest and detailed, and did not ask for anything. She read them, and responded with questions and corrections, and sometimes, not often, but sometimes, with something that was almost warmth. The moon goddess did not appear again. She had done what she came to do. She had hidden a queen in the one place a court would never look. In plain sight. In the body of a woman they had decided was not worth looking at. She had given her an exile. She had given her time. She had given her bricks, and a settlement, and a water channel, and a territorial dispute, and enough cold winters to learn that she did not break. Then she had told the world who Seraphine was. She had been right about all of it. The last image of the story is simple. A new moon night, the one night the goddess's light is absent from the sky, when the clearing is lit by nothing but fire and stars, 7 packs at peace. A woman at the center of it who has learned, slowly and without anyone's permission, that the word they used to dismiss her was never about her at all. She stands there in the quiet. She is at peace. She always had this in her. World simply needed time to catch up.